Hey guys, iKailaKai here out of town once again, but out of nowhere today the EB04 card list for the Western format, that is the green, blue, and purple colors for EB04 have been released. Now while I do really want to talk about things like the 5-cost Porcelino because that is technically not going to be released for quite a while for the Western format, this video is going to focus on just the cards that have just been revealed today and talking about not only these decks that have been buffed, but also how they will potentially do in context of the entire OP14 meta. If you're somewhat unfamiliar with the OP14 format, I have also just put out a video on that as well, so make sure to check that out. I appreciate it very much. That took me a very long time to make. And let's just get straight into this with the first card, the 3-cost Kozuki Sukiyaki. Now Kozuki Sukiyaki is a 3-cost blocker which activate main once per turn. You can give a rested Don card to one of your Land of Wano type leaders. In our last video we were talking about the 7-cost Kikunojo and how it's a very good addition for the red Green Oden deck, and talked about how because the card is activate main, you would technically need to play things out like the 5-cost Yamato or the 1-cost Hiyori, which is part of EB03, to actually be able to fully utilize this effect on the 7-Dong turn. Now, some people in my comments have mentioned to me that you actually do play out this 5-cost Yamato quite often on 5-Dong, so maybe this isn't as awkward as I may believe that it would be, but this Kozuki Sukiyaki is actually quite a big game changer in my opinion. You're no longer shackled to the 5-cost Yamato on 5-Dong or be doomed to a weak turn unless you have that 1-cost Hiyori on the board. You now have a very solid card on the board that's going to continuously give you value over and over again. I would compare this card to something like the 3-cost Bonnie from PRB02, but of course in context of the leader effects they do somewhat different things. This allows Oden to be a lot more aggressive and his defensive stats become a little bit higher, whereas for Bonnie it's more of a purely defensive card, but the defensive capabilities of that card are much higher. So therefore there are a lot of things that these cards do differently, but they have the same sort of fundamental principle in being a 3-cost repeatable action on a blocker. This means that now, even if you don't have something to play on that 1-Dong turn like Hiyori, you can on 3-Dong play out Kozuki Sukiyaki, then on 7-Dong you can play out Kikunojo, use Kozuki Sukiyaki's effect, use that to attach to your leader, and then swing twice with your leader with the Kikunojo effect while making your leader 7k power. Having more ways to get Dong onto your leader is going to make this effect a lot easier to use, and it's certainly going to feel very nice for this deck. Being 7000 power is great into a deck like Hancock, but against a deck like Ina, when your characters are going to be 7000 power once you start to put down that 7-cost Peter, it doesn't actually matter too much. While he has some very good tools at his disposal, it's very tricky for him to actually execute upon his best move every single time. However, as many of Red Green Oden's weaknesses can't be fundamentally fixed by just these cards, I don't necessarily think that is going to make Red Green Oden that much better within the meta as a whole, but he will definitely be stronger just as a deck to play for fun. I think that one deck that has actually become significantly better is, of course, Carrot. Now, I'm a big fan of this deck. I mentioned in the last video that the 8-cost Carrot feels very, very good. I actually have a surprising amount of games on Carrot just because I've had a lot of time coping these decks to potentially try to break the meta. In my head, it was a deck that could potentially contend with Bonnie being a green control deck in a way, but potentially because of the leader effect, having a better Ima matchup. However, unfortunately, after my testing, I came to the conclusion that the Ace matchup was just a little bit too far gone. Unfortunately, things like the 6-cost Jozu really have very little counterplay within the Carrot deck, and that is until the new Mistums. And by the way, if you're a bit of a manga fan, this is Pekomizu, which I guess is called Pekoms in English, but in Japanese, Pekoms in this mysterious mask is called a Nuzzlemizu, and Nuzzle means mystery. So instead of Nuzzlemizu, you get Pekoms Mystery Tums, Mistums. But yeah, anyways, this card is really, really nice because not only is it just playing out a character for you, filling up your board, which is also going to potentially be an extra attacker once you play out this 8-cost Carrot to just get a bunch of free attacks in, but it also has more cost reduction. And cost reduction in Carrot, as we've established in a couple of our other videos, is really, really nice. Even with just one single cost being reduced through this card, now your 5-cost Carrot can block an 8-cost, and the 6-cost Carrot, which once again, I'm sorry, is not out in EB04 quite yet because it's an EB03 card, can now KO 6 costs. And this means, of course, that now we do have an answer to Jozu. If you play down the 6-cost Jozu into the 5-cost Carrot, for example, and the opponent responds with Jozu, then they have to decide between if they want to bounce back the 5-cost Carrot, making sure that you cannot lock their characters, or bounce back the 6-cost Nuzzlemizu to make sure that you can't, for example, 6-cost Carrot. This is a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation because at the very least one character is going to stick on the board, which means that your leader effect is always going to be most assuredly online, and also if you have that -1 cost on the board, then there's a lot of interesting things you can do through the other effects that Carrot has, whether it's cost reduction, locking, or even KOing. I believe that all in all, Carrot has the tools to be able to contend with the meta, but I do worry that without the 6-cost Carrot from EB03, that the deck may not actually be able to really claim the throne that it wants to in OP14. The 6-cost carrot is just so powerful in what it can do and the flexibility with the cost reduction that's now been given to carrot. But because we're in a weird situation where the East has EB03 and no EB04, and the West has EB04 but no EB03, we have this awkward situation where one side has removal and the other side has cost reduction, but neither side has both. So as much as I want to say that carrot's going to be the new best deck in format, I'm not 100% convinced just because it doesn't have the 6-cost carrot yet. I think that potentially in OP14 with all of EB04, carrot could potentially be an actual very high tier meta contender with all of the cards that she now has in her kit, but without the 6-cost carrot, I can't be confident. This is an unfortunate byproduct of the way that Bandai is releasing their product currently, and similar to carrot, I think there's another deck that actually really wants to have the EB03 cards to actually become a full deck, and that is Sanji. Sanji has very strong cards in his kit. The 5-cost Reiju from EB03 makes it so that you can essentially play 6-cost Red Rock or 7-cost Gravity Blade while playing down a character for only 5 dong. This alongside your leader effect and just being able to play out a ton of cards and a ton of free spells every single turn makes this deck extremely dynamic, extremely hard, and extremely powerful into the right matchups. While the Ima matchup is a very big struggle, unfortunately, the Green Zoro matchup in OP14 has effectively disappeared, meaning that Blue-Purple Sanji as a whole in OP14 is in a pretty good spot, but that is, of course, if it has this EB03 Reiju. In EB04, the deck gains 2 cards, and I believe that both of these cards are very, very powerful for this deck. The first one, and I believe one of the most game-changing cards for this deck, is Stealth Black. Stealth Black as a card plays out one of the Sanjis, and with your lead effect, of course, this means it's going to be a free effect. One of the biggest issues with Sanji was trying to find timings to play down your 3-cost Sanjis. If you could find timings to play down your 3-cost Sanjis and you just stall out the game with things like Gum Gum Giant, Konkase, or Buhubasa, you could really stretch the game out to a point where eventually your Sanjis on the board are going to be 3-cost 9,000 immovable bodies that are just going to body the opponent. This, alongside the Reiju, gave you so much flexibility and so much dynamism in your gameplay, making it very hard for the opponent to predict and play around your moves. However, if you couldn't get down a 3-cost Sanji on that 3-dong turn, it was very tricky to find timings later on because you're going to be playing purely defensively, and you never really had good timings to play out Sanjis after. Because of Stealth Black, your Sanjis now cost 0 effectively because your leader effect is going to play them out for free. If you were to hit with a Sanji early on when it's still at 6,000 and then the opponent takes it back, then you could very easily resummon it from trash with Stealth Black as well, making it so that not only does this card really easily help you fill up your board with Sanjis, but also gives you more timing so you could hit earlier on because you're not punished as hard for if these Sanjis go away. Historically, if these Sanjis were taken, you were just out of luck, you had no more Sanjis, and you were slowly running out of fuel, so therefore it was really hard to actually rest these Sanjis until they were at 7,000-8,000 power. Thankfully, thanks to Stealth Black, you have a lot more flexibility in your gameplay, and just being able to play it for free with your leader effect, I think that's crazy. And while this card can play Sanji out of hand or trash, you obviously want to play a card out of trash when possible because that means that your hand size won't be going down. But how do you get more Sanjis into your trash? It doesn't have counters, so it's not easy to get into your trash, and therefore you kind of have to awkwardly use things like Gum Gum Rain to force it into your trash to resummon it. It doesn't really feel like you're getting that much value. But there's another card that came out in EB04. The 1-cost, I Hear the Sound of a Lady's Teardrops Falling. Main, if your leader is Sanji, look at the 3 cards on top of your deck and reveal 1 Sanji or event card and add it to your hand. Then trash the rest. Then on counter, you may trash 1 card from your hand and up to 1 of your Sanji cards gains plus 4,000 power during this battle. The counter effect on this card is very similar to things like Gum Gum Giant Gavel, which actually some Sanji lists have run in the past just to fill up your trash a bit faster while having some good defense. This card, though, has a lot of things going for it. Not only does the counter effect just give you plus 4,000, which is very solid, it also gives you a way to get Sanjis into your trash, but also the main effect, being able to search through the 3 cards and find a event or Sanji, which is going to effectively be 90+% of your deck. But because the main effect trashes the rest of the card, and of course because you're using the card, that card goes into your trash, you're effectively filling up your trash by 3 cards. And this means effectively you can get up to 3 events in your trash, which for Sanji is very nice because there's many effects that of course activate once you get 4 events in your trash, but this is going to be met quite quickly when you're playing Sanji. The main thing, of course, is just going to get as many events into your trash as possible to make your 3-cost Sanji as big as possible, as fast as possible. The main effect on this card increases the consistency of this deck so much, while also making your Sanji stronger, which is just the main benefit of playing this deck. So, unfortunately, while this deck doesn't have access to something like the 5-cost Reiju quite yet, I think that once all of these cards are out, that Sanji could be a very good meta contender. Okay, hi, I was just editing this video and looking through my new Discord server, which I made yesterday as of recording this, which by the way you can join, link in the description, and Nina in my Discord server let me know that 3-cost Sanji is in fact the Alabasta type, which means that the new 2-cost Terracotta is going to give Sanji unblockable, which is so good. Oh my god, Sanji's going to be best second format now. No, but actually I did want to talk about this Terracotta, so I'm glad that I actually have a chance to. This 2-cost Terracotta, while it maybe doesn't seem like too much, gives Vivi, and I guess now also Sanji, a means of actually closing out the game. Vivi has been pretty good at just being able to relentlessly push over the opponent, but against decks like Ema, once the opponent puts up their blocker roll, it's very hard to actually get through. And just having a card like this that's not only a 2k counter, but also gives you an unblockable effect is just really, really nice on something like the 8-cost Chaka and Pel, but also on the 3-cost Sanji when it eventually and inevitably becomes 9,000 power. So, great card. Sanji looks like so much fun. I don't know if it's going to be enough without the 5-cost Reiju though. But hey, when we get all of the cards, great deck. And while so far in this video I've only talked about decks that I feel like maybe won't really quite be able to break into the top of the meta, Carrot being potentially the closest, I next want to talk about a leader that I think actually has a lot of potential and a lot of interesting things that can be done. And that is going to be the whole Animal Kingdom package. A lot of these new purple Animal Kingdom Pirates cards are very good because of the existence of each other. So it's hard for me to just show one card on the screen and talk about why that's good, because a lot of them are good in context. Still, I'm going to try my best and talk about each one of these, but build upon them and jump between them because they are going to make sense as a whole. And while I think that potentially purple Kaido may be able to come back in OP14. First, to start with the 1-cost Queen. This card is a 1/1 with 1000 counter, and on play you may trash one of your Animal Kingdom Pirate and draw 2. Then activate main once per turn, you may rest 2 Dong to gain 1 Dong rested. Now, first, the second card's insane, but let's talk about the first effect. Effectively, what this means is that you can filter through your deck much easier, and for a deck that they've purposely not printed a purple 1-cost searcher character for, this sort of filtering through your deck is going to be very nice because the purple Animal Kingdom Pirates package does have a lot of bricks in it. Historically, purple Animal Kingdom Pirates would only be good if you could find Onigashima on the 3-Dong turn, and with only one card in purple that could search out this card, it was very difficult to justify playing this deck because there's just so little consistency. Instead of printing another searcher, as they have tried to do multiple times with the 1-cost Queen in black or the 1-cost Who's Who in blue, they've just decided to print another Onigashima in a way. And while we're on the topic of these other colored searchers, let's just mention that the Queen cannot search Queen, unfortunately. So black-purple Kaido cannot find this card, unfortunately, but blue-purple Kaido can. Still, I believe that purple Kaido is probably going to be the best user of these cards, while I think that purple-black King could be a fun deck that could also use these cards quite well as well. Still, looking at this 1-cost Queen, effectively it gives you a Onigashima effect on a 1-cost with 1000 counter, but you do need to pay for it every single turn. Still, because this card is a 1-cost, you can play this card out on the first turn, whether you're going first or second, and activate the effect the turn after that, letting you gain 1 Dong at the same time that you would be able to with Onigashima. So technically on that first activation, it's the same cost as Onigashima, and just having a little bit more Onigashima in your deck is never going to hurt this deck because that's really what you need. If we go all the way back to OP01, one of the strongest things that you could do in the game was to play down Onigashima on 3, and on the 6th Dong turn, which would be your 3rd turn in the game, you could play the 6-cost Kaido to answer the opponent's 4-drop that they just played on turn 2. This was just a very powerful combo, and although we didn't have any searchers back then, if you could manage to pull this combo off, it felt game-ending. And while the game has changed drastically since then, purple Kaido really hasn't. If you can get to 6 Dong, you still have some really powerful 6-drops you can play, and one of those is the new 6-cost Kaido, 6-cost King. King is a 6/7, which when the card would be KO'd, you may instead return one of your Dong cards. Then activate main if your leader is the Animal Kingdom Pirates type, and you have no other kings on the board, then you can gain 1 Dong active and 1 Dong rested. Effectively, meaning that if you get to 6 Dong, that means that next turn you're going to be at 10 Dong. Because of the effect of King and the 2 Dong that you get at the start of the turn, you're always going to start the turn with 10 active Dong on what should be your 7 Dong turn when you're going first. This means that you don't actually need to have Onigashima on the board resting itself every single turn to give you Dong, because the 6-cost King is just going to take over that job partway through the game. Really what matters is just getting that first ramp, and now that we have 2 options as well as in the past a searcher, although it is an event, to be able to find them, it makes this deck a lot more consistent in a way that I didn't really expect Bandai to do. And not only this, but if you go second, actually this card is in a way stronger than Onigashima, because if by some chance you roll the 4.5% chance, or with Mulligan 8.8% chance of getting 2 of this Queen in your starting hand, that means that on the 4 Dong turn you can ramp twice, and therefore what should be your 6 Dong turn is now your 8 Dong turn. And from there, a lot of crazy things can happen. And getting to 10 dong in Kaido is a lot scarier than it may seem because there's a lot of things that you can do. And while things like the draw Kaido or the Kaido Ninding would be extremely powerful on curve, things like the OP01 10 cost Kaido are not really powerful because you want the opponent to develop their board before you actually take it back with your effect. It's for this reason that I actually think that Kaido Ninding may finally find its place in a deck and finally be good, because you have extreme consistency in the deck now to get to that 10 dong turn very quickly. Still, these 10 costs are not the only strong way to play the game because we have another very good card, and that is the 7 cost Rush Kaido. This Kaido is a 7/9 without counter and has the same effect as King, where if this card would be KO'd, you may instead return 1 dong. Then on play, if you were to return 2 dong, then you would gain Rush as well as arresting one of the opponent's 7 cost or less characters. Now, just having a 7 cost 9000 Rush is very scary, but this -2 dong has always felt a little bit awkward because unless you're already at 10 dong or you have Onigashima on the board, you're not actually gaining any dong, and therefore playing this on curve felt a little bit bad because it meant that you couldn't actually play your higher end things. Still, because of the 6 cost King, you're gaining so much dong that this reduction doesn't actually matter at all. And not only this, but because the 7 cost Kaido is, well, 7 cost, it means that you have 3 dong left on that 10 dong turn. Well, what do you do with that dong? If not play Black Maria. You see, Black Maria was a card that was exceptionally powerful in Japan in Red Purple Law, but because Red Purple Law was actually banned in the West before OP08, this card was never actually really useful in the West, despite it completely terrorizing the East. And finally, it may be time for this card to come back. If on 10 dong, you play out the 7 cost Kaido and the 3 cost Black Maria, you can then use your purple Kaido leader effect, reduce your dong by 7, so therefore -9 dong on this turn, to trash one of the opponent's life, gain Rush on your character, rest one of the opponent's blockers, and then with the Black Maria effect, the 6 costing effect, as well as the 2 dong that you get at the start of the next turn, you're going to be back at 10 dong. Essentially, because of these really powerful 6 to 7 costs that have been printed within this deck, you now have very good times to play out the 3 cost Black Maria, and therefore over and over again use the purple Kaido leader effect to burn the opponent's life. And this is especially important into a deck like Hancock that relies on triggers. If you were to have one of your life burned through the opponent's effects, even if that card has trigger, you cannot use that trigger effect. So let's say, for example, you're purple Kaido against Hancock and you just never hit the opponent's leader and you just over and over use your leader effect. The opponent's not going to get a single trigger the entire game because they just won't be able to take any life on normal circumstances. If they decide to just fill up their board with characters and you just stall the game out and play out the 10 cost Kaido from OP01, well, Boa's leader effect is only once per turn, so while yes, you do lose 1 life, they lost their entire board at the same time. Although he probably still will struggle into a deck like Ime, just has gotten so many tools at his disposal, and finally, we have a leader that seems like it's going to actually be good into a lot of the OP13 things. Particularly things like Mihawk as well is very weak to removal, and while he has some good tools to be able to deny that, like the 5 cost Tachigi, the 7 cost Shanks and the 9 cost Mihawk are just complete sitting ducks in the face of something like the OP01 Kaido. This card, despite being printed in OP01, still has no match in the power that it has to clear the board. And because King as well as Kaido can protect themselves from KO effects, this 10 cost Kaido only hurts the opponent. While last video I talked about Carrot being the best deck in format, maybe it's going to be Purple Kaido, because this deck looks sick. I'm sure this deck's going to have a couple more weaknesses. I'm sure that bricks are going to be one of them, but just on paper, having very good matchups into a lot of the more popular OP14 leaders, as well as having good tools to deal with a deck like Ace, makes me feel like this is one of the decks that's going to be a lot more viable with the EB04 support compared to our OP14 meta in Japan. Still, at the end of the day, who knows? Maybe nothing is going to change. Maybe everything is going to change. Maybe Foxy's the best deck in format. Hell, I mean, we got a pretty good searcher as well. And now, finally, because it's a set that I'm not going to be able to play before you guys, it's up to you to tell me the answers. So maybe let me know in the comments what decks you are more excited for. Tell me what you'll be playing. Are you just going to be playing Emo or Ace anyways? Do any of the new OP14 or EB04 cards excite you? Just let me know how are you feeling today. Thank you guys as always for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.